Welcome to the Earthworks Podcast, where our team will share the jargon of carbon from many of our turf friends from the past 30 years.
Hi, everybody. This is Joel Simmons, along with our friend Jack Higgins. And full disclosure, Jack, last week was the July 4th holiday, and we kind of screwed up in getting podcasts out. So you and I are going to sit here and do a Midsummer update and talk a little bit about what's going on. And it's been a brutal summer, at least in the Northeast. And we are down in Jacksonville, Florida, live because you and I together are going to be doing Soil First Academy, which is a class that we've been teaching now as long as you've been with us, 15 years, right?
Yeah,
Have
definitely.
we always been doing it?
I've been coming to these for a long time, and I'm happy to participate. And because I like it. I like doing it. You know, it's fun, and you really turn a couple light bulbs on, and everyone gets together, has a good day too. So it's cool. But yes, today is the Monday after the July 4th weekend.
July 4th holiday.
You and I got on a flight this morning. You picked me up, as is the routine, because this is, by the way, everybody, if you can set it up like this, have your boss
pick you up at your house.
Yeah.
Chauffeur you to the airport.
Live between your boss's house and the airport.
Yeah, so I get to drive in, and so this was quite the amazing day of travel. And many of you who know us well have heard many of our travel horror stories. Today was certainly one of them. So I'll start the story, but I think you need to embellish it because you watched it really. But we go to the airport. We park at a valet parking garage.
The same one
we've been going to. That I've been literally going to for 35 years.
You know it.
So you get on, and you guys have been to the airport. You've seen the little buses. This happens to be a little spot bus. So we get on the bus, and they've always been very good. I mean, they park their car, pay them some money. They get us on this little shuttle, and they drive us.
And most everyone knows us,
and
especially
that's
you.
That's kind of scary.
Yeah.
Yes. Hi, Joel. How's it going? Oh, You're back again this week. So we get on the bus, and we drive to the airport, and we're literally a block from the terminal, about to get off, so we can have enough time to sit down, chat, maybe get a bite to eat. And the next thing I know, I'm flying through the air, and I'm on the floor, and I'm in a bit of pain, but
dude, so we were taking a left we were stopped at the red light. We were taking a left. We got the green left arrow, but the guy across from us decided to go straight at the same time and crash. I saw it coming.
Yeah, I didn't see any of it.
I was actually in like the optimal seat for this car crash. You were in the least optimal seat.
Yes, I
for the car
wasn't in a
crash.
good seat at all.
And
so what did it look like?
You went horizontal, dude. Like your legs and whole body was parallel with the floor of the van. And then you landed.
I fell on my ass and landed. The first thing I think I did was I smashed into the poor guy sitting to my left.
He got banged up.
And he got banged up. So I pushed into him, and it happens as all car crashes do. I mean, they happen in a split second.
The only way we could be talking about this with any kind of like laughter is that everyone
Nobody
was okay.
got horribly hurt.
Because we were only going probably like 4 miles an hour.
We were at a stop sign. He just started coming literally 5 feet from where he was coming at a stop sign, and I still went vertical.
Exactly.
Which is, and again, the poor guy next to me, I hit him. I think our heads hit, and then he smashed into this little plastic divider between his seat and where the suitcases go, and he got pretty banged up. There was a woman in front of you who did the same thing. She went sliding, hit the guy to her right, and smashed him into
But the
thing.
left side of the van or shuttle took a harder hit than the right side of the van. You were on the left side.
So I was horizontal. That's kind of creepy.
Yeah, parallel with the floor.
Wow. Wow. And we're still standing. So let's go back to the Academy. I mean, for those who don't know the Soil First Academy, I encourage you to talk to your distributor partners that work with us. Bring an Academy into town. I mean, we've been doing this now for most of our professional career. And the genesis of the Academy was I took the 10-week program that I taught at Rutgers, and I turned it into a 3 or 4 hour seminar, and it's accredited by GCSAA, and it gives us the opportunity not to stand there and sell earthworks material, but what we're doing is we're explaining in great detail the why of what we do. And we really get into biological soil management. I mean, I think my favorite part of it is that I really kind of follow the three-legged stool, talk about chemistry, how it affects physics, and then really have the opportunity to talk about what you and I in particular are most passionate about, which is the soil biology.
Yep.
And we really dive into it. And it's fascinating, the parts of the country that we go to with this, and we've been pretty much everywhere in the country doing the academy. And then just listening to the response. I mean, we have real cult followers that come up to us and like, wow, I never heard it. And, I mean, this was the best seminar we've ever had. And I don't say that to brag. I mean, I'm humbled by that.
We do things different than most turf seminars. Really, like we're very much talking about, we get a little esoteric. I mean, we talk about the whole big system, the way like a whole symbiotic biological system,
how soil really works.
Yeah, and so you hear stuff that, and we also we reference specific things, and we do get into how to improve and how to make changes, and how the soil test is a major part of that and everything like that.
Yeah,
so
I spend a lot of time on the soil test, how to read a soil test.
It's
That's
unique
important.
as far as
chemistry.
the conference or turf talks go, turf seminars. This is a unique one.
And I think the thing that really gets me most excited is that we'll go to the same sites with our distributor partners, and we'll see similar faces. I mean, there are many academies that will just do year after year after year at the same site about the same time of year, and you'll see a lot of the same people, and we're like, why are you here again? Well, I mean, I learned so much, and I think I only got 10% of it. And we've had people 3, 4, 5 times that have come to the academy, and every time they said, no, I'm always picking something. Of course, we're always trying to change it. I mean, you and I are always talking about, hey, this would be a cool thing to throw into the academy. I mean, when we started looking into not geophagy, but rhizophagy.
Right.
I mean, that was really a big change. And we're always, as a team, we're always geeking out as agronomists with all the guys, and something comes up, and it's like, oh, that's cool. That makes perfect sense.
It's
So,
much like the podcast. It's an opportunity to tell stories.
Exactly.
And also other voices are heard too. Often, like is the case tomorrow. The host is an Earthworks user, so like they often have something to say about using the product. And it's an opportunity for stories to be told.
And again, it's really not product driven. It's really about biological soil management, this concept that we've been promoting for all of these years. What is the significance of biological soil management, and how does it distinguish itself from other agronomic philosophies? And it's very definitive. I mean, I think it has really helped open up a lot of eyes for a lot of guys to realize that, soil biology is a big piece of what we do, and we affect it in both positive and negative ways in the acts of managing a property.
That's right. It's honest. The Soil Academy is honest, because like we do talk about the things that we just can't avoid as turf managers.
Right.
For example, a monoculture, and I had sent you that article today
on the airplane today.
Yeah, which I kind of wanted to bring up and chat about, because I thought it was really cool. So anyway, but we're talking about monocultures and
we'll talk
polycultures.
about that article. It was kind of interesting.
Yeah, monocultures, polycultures of turf stands. So the article was, I'll take this one.
Please.
The citizen scientist, which
I love that phrase.
Yeah, it's a good term. I mean, so anyway, it was a citizen scientist who had moved to nearby a golf course, or neighboring a golf course. His outdoor cat got cancer. He accredited the cancer to chemicals in turf management. So it just ignited a passion for him to look into, what is there a better way to do this? What are the better ways to do this? So ultimately, what he came to, and this is where this was a Washington Post article, right? Which is kind of cool. It's like in
national publication, kind of.
Yeah,
I mean,
so
everybody reads the Post.
So what he came to was that polyculture, basically. He wanted a diverse, in terms of species of plants, as diverse as you could get with the species of plants. However, he was still using all turf grasses, which was cool, because
so this is for his lawn,
right? This is and
that.
that's what we should qualify, is that ultimately, if his goal was to change things on like a golf course or a sports field, it doesn't apply, because we know that we really do
Different
need the monoculture. Like, however, in lawns or even rough common areas, stuff like that, a polyculture, which we most have been doing for a long time.
And regenerative agriculture talks about, diversity of species.
That's what I loved about it, because I do remember actually Jerry talking about in pasture talks, talking about how the different plant species interacted to both do better, to both grow more abundantly and efficiently, and more than likely that has something to do with the particular microbiology that each species is colonizing and working
So
with.
we know each plant will for sake of a better term, spit out certain types of chemicals specific to that particular plant material.
Root exudates.
Yes, thank you.
There's a bunch of slides on it tomorrow.
We talk about it all the time. I can't say it, but it's a good word. But that's what the plant is doing and using to communicate. And when you have diversity within a pasture is the perfect example. And we were, Lawrence Mayhew and I were on a pasture walk with one of our friends not too long ago, and we did a podcast. The three of us did a podcast after that. But that's what they were talking about, is this diversity of species, and how when you have that diversity, each plant brings a different community of microbiology to the soil profile. And I think that's what, this guy was doing, this experimentation, and he apparently did this over years.
Yeah, I think 10 years.
Yeah, planted a lot of different
thousands
grass types
of pots,
and a lot of them didn't survive. And through selection, he finally found some older varieties, and it doesn't really matter what they were, because the point here is the diversity. But what he did was, through the years, he started to select certain species in his community, in his environment, that survived.
Which he was in the Northeast. He was outside of Boston.
Yeah, he was in Massachusetts,
it was all
I believe. Cool season.
It was
stuff,
cool
rye,
season plants.
fescues,
He leaned
blues.
heavily in these blends that had, I think, maybe like 10 or 12 different species in them, but more than 50% of them were different fine fescues. Red fescue, Chewing's fescue, hard fescue, I think 2 reds. But there was also ryegrass, there was also tall fescue, and there was also some bluegrass.
And I think we're trying to make a point here, not so much say, hey, you should be planting your golf course with a diversity of species. That's not what we're trying to say. But it's fascinating from a soil biological standpoint how microbiology reacts to different plant species and how important that diversity is. And again, it's certainly taking on a large role in sustainable and regenerative agriculture, because they're starting to realize if we can get that diversity of plant material, we get a diversity of biology. That biology does different things within the soil profile, and plants stay healthier and produce, just a better crop.
I'm surprised that the Post didn't even pick up on the big news out of it, and maybe I should write the follow-up article, because
I think this was a comfort piece, but
it was a comfort piece.
But when
However,
we read it, was kind of
it could be very comfortable to know that it was all about growing the deepest, biggest root systems. And actually, they talked, there were several pages dedicated to talking, or pictures and captions and everything, about the depth of the roots he was growing. He had them growing in like a 6 or 8 foot column, PVC pipe, or rather clear pipe.
And without trying to criticize him, it was interesting being, again, a citizen, agronomist, scientist. I don't know that he really understood what most of us in our industry would really understand. And the fact that, he selected those for deeper rooting obviously means more water, more nutrients, a different whole biological species. I mean, these are kind of the things that, as we're reading this, we're kind of, implanting in our head, is that, this was pretty fascinating what this guy came up with without really even understanding it all.
And I'll tell you where they buried the lead that I'm so hot on. carbon sequestration.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
what all that is sucking carbon dioxide out of the atmosphere, putting it into a root system, and growing a topsoil, humifying.
And that's one of the things that we talk a lot about in the turf industry. We're a cover crop. And if you're not using this conversation as part of your dialogue with your community, with your membership, you are one of the greatest carbon sequesters in your community. I mean, you think about 200 acres of a cover crop. That's always a cover crop, constantly pulling carbon out of the atmosphere, cleaning the environment. I mean, these are real positives that might not be talked about when we're talking about the value of a turf stand.
No, absolutely. And the way that we do it, the way the biological soil management way approach grows roots,
right?
And that is carbon sequestering,
and it allows us to reduce certain inputs, so that we're not only producing a better plant material and getting deeper rooting and getting more carbon out of the atmosphere, but we can do it with less materials that might damage the carbon.
And that was
factor.
the whole point. That was
Right.
the take that the Washington Post had on it, actually. So, which was cool.
So, having dribbled over that for a couple
minutes,
minutes,
for a couple minutes, I do.
But it's important.
Yeah, it is important. It's cool, and it's cool. It's current. That was just in I think a Washington Post article.
Yeah, and it was
over
interesting.
The weekend.
I mean, as I was recovering from my crash,
oh my gosh,
and then of course we land in Jacksonville, and it's a torrential downpour.
We did land right ahead of this thunderstorm,
this massive storm, and they just stopped us on the tarmac, and we sat there for an hour because they wouldn't allow the planes to move because there was lightning and thunder.
Well,
all
and you
around
know
us.
what it was? They had said the jet bridge. Think about it, isn't grounded.
Right.
So, and
they
they couldn't let you onto the jet bridge because it's just an aluminum tube.
It's just a tube of exactly.
Just a big conductor. And you're the ground.
Yeah, and I'm the ground. And after having been in a minor fender bender and getting banged up a hair, but it was good that we didn't get electrocuted on the way out and all that kind of stuff.
All good.
But
we're still going to make dinner tonight.
And we're still going to make dinner, and we'll still be at the Academy in the morning, which will be good. So let's spend some time talking about where we are at this point of year. So
Midsummer
this is
update.
this Midsummer review. And, Jack and I, of course, are in the Mid-Atlantic, or actually in New Jersey, which is now the Mid-Atlantic because, again, USDA moved the zones up a notch. And I've said this a number of times on the podcast. I remember when Brandon from Lanark Country Club talked about this. Is Philly's going to be Baltimore 10 years ago, and now it is officially. But it was interesting to see what was happening. But it has been a god awful summer. I mean,
so
since
hot.
mid of June, and it's not usually. We've had already in our area, in the New York City area, 2 or 3 heat waves. And what's a heat wave? 90 days, 3 days in a row.
Yeah.
90 degrees of temperature sustained for 3 days at a stretch. And I think we're in the middle of our third one, and it's only the first week of July.
And it was incredibly droughty for a while. We've gotten some rains, but with this amount of heat, it's although the humidity is up right now too, it's just the weather's awful.
And I've talked to a number of superintendents, certainly in the Mid-Atlantic, but all across the country, that are fighting the same thing. I talked to one of our former podcast guests, Ryan Higgins, down at TPC in Washington, D.C. He's already buying water. This was middle of June. I mean, that's how. We shouldn't be in this kind of a stretch this early in the year. This is mid-July, early August kind of weather, and it doesn't look like it's giving up. And you can imagine what, guys are just losing their brains. I talked to a buddy of ours, and he said, I'm out pulling a hose every day. It's just,
that's definitely what you're doing.
You're horrible.
You're in it. So, we've talked recently about like the kick rinse-in, but with something that's kind of evolved out of the kick rinse-in, and we've
kind of a
done
new approach to that.
Yeah, we've done some 2-minute turf
Let's
talks
back
about
up a
it.
little bit, but the reason why we want to talk about that as some kind of a flushing program is that because of this weather, and everybody, I think, across the country is still battling it, everybody's putting out a lot more irrigation water. Where does sodium bicarbonates come from? They're coming from the irrigation water. So understand that as you're increasing the volume and frequency of your irrigation water, you're also increasing substantially the amount potentially of sodium buildup, of bicarbonate buildup. And we know bicarbonates are going to seal the soil surface, lead to localized dry spots. Sodium is going to lead to sodium-induced wilt stresses, fighting potassium.
The other thing you see on the soil test a lot right now too is high chlorides.
Yeah, because a lot of city water going out.
Yeah,
and that's, I mean, think about what that does to microbiology.
Just shuts it down.
And that's really a point I want to make very strongly, is that I think we understand what sodium can do to the plant, but think about what it's going to do to two other things: the microorganisms in that soil and the physical structure of the soil. Sodium, bicarbonates, chlorine will affect the physical structure of the soil and start to break it down. It will definitely affect microbial population. So they're going to slow down microbial activity because of this. I mean, the microbial activity is already slowing down because of the intense heat. But now we're adding on top of it a lot more water than would normally be there that is higher in sodium, bicarbonates, chlorine, other salts. And this is just a combined, whammy against what's going on.
Yeah, so it makes the job harder. What we try and do then is bring what can outweigh the contaminants.
Right. How do we buffer all of this? I mean, one of the things, and I know you want to get into some of the specifics here, but one of the things I want to throw out is this is where our monitoring program really seems to work well. So you do this, I do this with a lot of my clients. I'll run a green or two or a field or two, depending on the environment, just a paste extract every month. So let's say it's a golf course. I'm going to run 1 or 2 greens, maybe one front 9, back 9, good green, bad green, whatever the superintendent feels is important. But we run that just a paste extract every month. And that starts to really show you what the accumulation of sodium salts, bicarbonates might be. So it gives you a really good indication, a visual indication, a quantitative visual, indication as to where are you with this buildup. And now it keeps you ahead of the curve. So, if you were to wait for 3 or 4 months to do that and you've been accumulating sodium, you could find yourself in a situation where it's almost impossible to get out of. So coming back to a solution here,
keeping tabs is important.
Yeah.
And the other way that you're going to see the effects of all this is your roots are going to start to come up. I mean,
and everybody sees that. I mean, it gets, it's hot, it's dry, it's gooey, the water's not good.
And that's what we're trying to do.
Roots are coming up.
Grow roots.
Yeah.
Back to the carbon sequestration, back to making everything easier.
And we can grow roots in this horrible environment of we say this all the time. Everything that we kind of do in terms of agronomy is set up for June, July, and August. It's just that June is usually kind of soft and easy. July gets a little hotter. August gets really gross, and then it kind of slows down halfway through. It used to be, I remember when I got into the business, everybody would say, yeah, just get to the 15th of August and you'll be safe. That 15th of August is now 15th of September.
Yeah,
and that,
just not like
that 15th
anymore.
of July is now 1st of June. It's just nuts.
Right. The overnight highs we've been having, the dew points, it's all been really.
I hate this weather. I really hate this
You know
weather.
what? To be honest, I can't say this. These guys will kill me, but I love it.
Well, you're a beach boy. You get down to the beach and it's 20 degrees cooler.
I like that. Yeah, but I also like that warm blanket humidity, actually.
Oh, my God. It's hard to breathe. I'm
a
a big kayaker. We can't even get on the Delaware River because the river's low. It's feet below what it should be. All you do is hit rock, or push the kayak down the river and stand in the river. And the air quality is so bad. It's tough. I mean, and I'm thinking about these guys that are trying to grow grass and working, out there in this weather all day long. I mean, it's just I feel
flying out today. You could barely see New York City from Newark.
Yeah, think about it. Think about it.
You could barely see it.
Let's talk about solutions. I mean, we're in the middle of this. It's June, July, August. It's the worst part of the season. It's the time that we all dread. And right now we're pounding the soils with a lot of water, not getting a lot of rain. Sometimes, we're getting some scattered showers that roll through, but sometimes you get mist. One of the things that we've seen a lot of success with, and you've probably led this, is a basic rinse-in program. And, you mentioned the kick rinse-in. We've kind of qualified that, and we've kind of, done that. So the original kick rinse-in was was an approach that said, all right, let's do a couple things. What are we trying to do? We want to get rid of the sodium, we want to replace it with potassium, and we want to get it out of there. So the original kick rinse in was we would put down calcium, which would break the bond in the soil. It would break the bond between the colloid and the sodium, or the colloid and the bicarbonate. And now that sodium or that bicarbonate is still sitting there. It's floating freely through the soil. So we used kick, which is a very strong, very powerful humic acid product, humic substance product, as Lawrence will tell us. And what that does is that humate would come into that profile and sequester the released sodium or bicarbonate or chloride, and now it would keep it from reattaching, and then we would flush it through with water and a good penetrant surfactant, get it out of there. Now, knowing that in 20 days, 30 days, 10 days, depending on how bad the environment is, that's going to build back up because you're irrigating again. So the frequency is dictated based on, again, monitoring the soil test, or just simply knowing the frequency of your irrigation water. But the concept works. So, getting calcium to break the bonds, both, we would use gypsum in a KVantage in the flush, and then we'd put kick and the surfactant in there and wash it all through, and then come back with potassium. So we've changed that a little bit, and you should talk about that now that we have KVantage, which I think has really made a big difference for a lot of people, and we're hearing it all the time.
And what we hear is that the plant responds better to irrigation. The plant the plant responds better to the water that's going out, which is so what you're after in this time of year, because it gets to the point where the water's not doing much for you, so that's the report that we're hearing back. And so yes, the approach isn't very far off from what it's been, and both work, but introducing KVantage in those soil sprays has been really good. With it goes well with BioVantage. Again, that
brings back biology, which again, we thought through this, and I think we really kind of tweaked the whole process to really get this process to really work. And we obviously we had a lot of folks working with us, putting this out in the field and then evaluating the success of it, and it's really come out very strong. So again, one of the key things here, and I've said this many times on the podcast and on Turf Talks, is that a lot of times it's not even so much the amount of sodium. It's not that we have so much sodium, it's that we just don't have enough available potassium to keep the sodium
and
at bay
that
within
was
the
the
plant.
big thing that Lawrence did in developing this formulation was eco-adaptive, make it very bioavailable, not soluble, bioavailable.
Yeah, it was interesting because it was the first product that Earthworks developed without Jerry. I mean, Jerry and I did most of these products, and now I'm working with Lawrence, and we went back and forth on KVantage for a long time. Obviously, he drove that, but with guidance, and so he found 3 organic forms of potassium, and he was able to use his eco-adaptive technology to balance everything out within the product, so no one element is heavy or overpowering another element, so
uptake,
everything can
the
be taken.
bioavailability.
And of course, all of these products are so rich in carbon materials that it just feeds the microbes, and they take this nice potassium and they can make it available very, very quickly. So what are we typically talking? 5 ounces, 3 ounces?
Yeah, 3 to 5.
Yeah.
And you get the response out of it.
How often are people doing it?
Every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Especially in this time,
especially
this sort
this
of weather.
Yeah. And we just did a couple turf talks on this. You and I both did one separately, and and again, out of response to people telling us that, hey, this is working, and you don't know when you build a new product, is it really going to do what we hope it does? And I think for the first time now, we're really seeing it in this god-awful weather.
Well, the other thing I like about it too is that people are using it with their C3 applications in larger acreage,
in fairways,
and what I think is really cool about it is that it's a great add-on for this part of the season. Where you get that you get that tolerance that you build that relief in the plant. And you don't have to necessarily be ahead of it the way you do with C3, which you do. Like the best way to see C3 work for you is to be ahead of the stress. Yeah. This is something you can add to that during the stress.
Yeah, and we continue to see the success of C3. I mean, it has become hands down our biggest selling product. Huge. I mean, we just have guys that come and say, I don't know what I did before that. I mean, I don't mean that to sound egocentric, but this is what we're hearing, and it's just such a great heat stress reducer for this time of year. But it's also a great it's the foundation of any. It should be in every, as we say in our ads, should be in every spray tank. It's the carbon base of every spray tank. Mm-hmm. So if you're putting out, a little ammonium sulfate, a little urea, a little anything, let this be the carbon base. So now you're doing carbon-based fertility.
Logan Freeman, who's been a guest, he just posted about. You saw that? Yeah, it was a C3 and KVantage combination on his fairways.
And it's funny because he's been on the podcast, and we love Logan, and he is a citizen scientist, or truly an agronomist. I mean, he's taught us as much as we've ever taught him. I mean, he's constantly fiddling with things and playing with things and coming back and saying, "Hey, I did this, and this." I'm like, really? That's
also
cool.
he also tested the larger grade Ecolite for us.
Oh, tell that story. I love that.
So, because
he's doing it on
doing it on the horse tracks.
Yeah.
So because obviously compaction is the name of the game, relieving compaction in horse tracks. So Ecolite, of course, is a porous mineral. We use it.
Ecolite is a zeolite mineral.
That's
mined material.
Yeah, we use it for opening up the soil, for having guaranteed gas exchange.
Right.
So anyway, use Ecolite. Ecolite, we've been sourcing it as like a greens grade that actually does get awfully fine.
Almost dusty. And that's part of the problem. It's hard when you're dealing with mined materials, and again, we're dealing in manufacturing processes that are not really set up to do to work in our industry.
Well, and we introduced it as a greens product.
And we introduced it as we 50% of Renovate Plus is the zeolite. Is the Ecolite.
But the mine can also make a screen out a larger piece, which is more like a 250 SGN, 220 SGN, something like that. It's bigger. Well, anyway, it fit great for the application for Logan because the fine material, when it blows out of a top dresser, it's too dusty. However, and college campuses have run into this. Everyone's run into this. Now, it's like, well, because you weren't so sure about this size.
I wasn't actually.
No. So, but it was like, well, who's going to try it? Who is going to try it?
And who's the guy we can get?
And who can report back with honesty? Did it work? Did it go well?
And we thought of two people. Logan and Todd Bunting.
There you go.
Sent me one of my favorite pictures of him up to his neck in a cloud of dust spreading some Ecolite on a golf course.
Ecolite's also key for holding potassium.
And that's part of this conversation. And we've been seeing this in small little doses. I mean, a lot of people have been playing with this, not only with building that potassium reservoir. So again, it's not a potassium mineral. I mean, it is a potassium silica, but that potassium is not available from the mineral. But what it does do, because of its mica-like structure, it gives a reservoir for the potassium so it won't leach out, and it can become bioavailable.
And it allows for gas exchange. It allows for oxygen in the root zone, which ultimately makes roots better.
And what's the most important nutrient in turf?
Yeah, oxygen.
Oxygen. So that's really it.
Everything that we're talking about, the contaminants are setting back roots.
And another thing that we're looking at with this, and we've kind of discovered over the last year, is that when guys are seeing algae or moss on a green surface or any kind of turf surface, an application, a top dressing of this will, because algae and moss are going to be, because something is sealed, there's water sheeting off the surface, and the moss can grow on that. The Ecolite will start to take that moisture away and prevent the environment by which moss and algae can proliferate.
Well, it draws moisture.
Right.
We know that. I mean, and so
you know, one of my first stories with this.
Oh yeah.
Many years ago, and I don't know if I've even told this story on the podcast, but I had a client. I think he was up in the Poconos. I don't even remember who it was, but he's spreading it out on his green, and he's panicked because he can actually see the grass starting to wilt because it's drawing moisture in. And he drives down and gets on the phone, calls me, and is all upset. And I said, well, just put some water on it. And he goes, that's what they're doing right now. I said, well, go back and then call me later. By the time, 5-minute drive and then a 5-minute drive back. By the time he got back, they had already run ahead, and it had perked right back up. And
yes,
it was not an issue at all. But it's gonna hold. I mean, it's used as a kitty litter.
You want it in the root zone.
You want it in the root zone. But even as a light top dressing on top, very light top dressing.
Oh yeah, so this was
on
about
top
the black
of algae and moss. We've got guys that are now just putting a spreader out there with a little bit of Ecolite in it and just letting it sit on the surface. It does get down into the canopy, and it does slow down moss and algae. So,
well, in fact, it's called "Get Rid of Black Algae Fast." It's an Earthworks 2-minute turf talk, and you can hear it directly on the Earthworks YouTube channel.
Yes, you can.
And it's firsthand with Brian O'Malley. He talks about his experience.
That's right. Yeah. And we've had a number of people that are. I did a talk up in New England, and I mentioned this, and everybody goes, "Oh, I never knew that," and they're starting to use it, and this has been a good year because it's been so nasty from that standpoint.
Let's change gears. You brought up New England. I know that 10 days ago, 2 weeks ago, you were up at Newport.
I was. It was spectacular. And it's funny because I went up there right after I recorded the podcast with Jim Nagel, the architect.
And this was the host of the U.S. Senior Open.
It was It was Newport Country Club, and they hosted the U.S. Senior Open. And our business partners, Tom Irwin, did a fantastic job of kind of making all the volunteers very, very welcome. But it is truly, if you've never had a chance to see this club, it's one of the most spectacular country clubs in the country. I mean, first of all, there's no irrigation in the fairways, and it's old school. It's stunning. It's wide open.
It's Newport.
No, it's Newport, Rhode Island.
Yeah.
But you got ocean views.
Right.
You got wind. I mean, if you watched any of the tournament, man, the wind could have been. It was just horrible. I mean, the way it ended, unfortunately, they got rain on Sunday, and they had to finish the roundup on Monday, and the weather was completely different. So, unfortunately, the leader at the time just wasn't able to hold it. But it's a beautiful course. And the neat thing is that I had recorded the podcast with Jim Nagel,
right?
Which, if you haven't heard, it's one of my favorite podcasts. And Jim was just a great guest. And I could talk architecture all day long, and Jim was great to talk about. But I asked him, which is probably the stupid question to ask an architect, what's your favorite golf course? He did mention Newport Country Club as one of his top favorite courses, and it's that spectacular. So when an architect, and in all honesty, Jim had done some work there over the years, but when an architect says, yeah, this is like, one of my favorites, I mean, we all have favorites.
It's worth checking out.
It's worth checking. I mean, one of my favorites is Billy's course.
National.
The National on Long Island.
He'd be a great podcast.
Yeah, he would be, Billy.
Bill.
But yeah, it was great. And it's funny because we've done, we've been at, we were at the PGA as a sponsor member, and of course we've recorded
the PGA Championship,
Valhalla, and of course Lancaster at the Women's Open, which was phenomenal. We got such a great response there, and it was just so much fun to be able to record. And we had, what did we do? Like 4 podcasts.
Oh, that was a blast. I mean,
it was a lot of fun.
Josh was so gracious.
Josh was great, and he just the team. Everything was perfect. And then I got to go up and see. Rhode Island and the Country Club, and it was just spectacular. And I'm actually wearing last year's U.S. Open at the Country Club in New England.
We've been on a run.
We've been on a run. Yeah, it's been fun.
Major
championships. I think I said this in the Pat Jones podcast. I don't play much golf, but I get asked a lot by some of the best golf courses. But what really gets me excited is just I get in the cart and drive around and just look at this spectacular designed architectural masterpiece of all these places that you and I get to go.
Oh, it's the best.
And it's funny. We were walking around. I was with a bunch of superintendents and industry guys walking around Newport, and we're all like saying, this is like heaven on earth. This is what we do for a living. I mean, it's not that easy. I mean, our jobs aren't easy. We're away from home a lot. We get a lot of pressure at times, but
there's some good perks.
When you get an opportunity to walk for a day on a country club as spectacular as Newport, it just makes the rest of the stress intense.
I didn't watch it, and so tell me about the fairways. There no irrigation.
Yeah,
I mean,
well, it's all earthworks, of course. No, sorry, I shouldn't say that. But
do they find fescue? Or is there a lot of fine fescue?
Yes, I believe that. And you put me on the spot there.
Right.
I'm pretty sure. Yes. I mean, it's obviously a pretty diverse species.
Yeah, that's
there's
right.
POA. There's
everything.
bent all through there. There's a lot of fescue. So I mean, it kind of addresses what we were talking about when we started. There's
that's kind of what I was thinking.
In the species there. The soils are light and sandy, so obviously it's difficult. But to have no irrigation, and they've actually people have brought up, well, should we bring irrigation? Obviously, they have irrigation around the greens and tees. But, every time it's brought up in a board meeting, like 13 out of 14 people say, no, we're not going to do that.
I go to a number of them on Long Island, Maidstone, Gardner's Bay, and it's... you don't want to change it. I mean,
and
awesome.
And when it's really horrible, it's just very dry, but it plays
farming.
fast and firm, and it's a great playing surface. I mean, the grass will come back. There's diversity to it, but it was really quite an experience, and another reason why we weren't able to record a podcast. I was up there, then we had the 4th of July, but it was just a spectacular.
Hey, this is a good podcast, man.
It's working out quite well,
It's
Jack.
a good
Thanks.
podcast.
Let's talk. Another thing that I wanted to bring up, and I've done this at my house, which is interesting. And I live in a small property, but I have some trial grass areas. One of the things that I've been doing, and I've been talking to superintendents about this, is using the 545, which is our baby. It was the first thing that we ever brought out. It was the first product we ever had. It's dense in mineral. It's a low nitrogen, so it's a high volume carbon product. Half a pound. Not a half a pound, but a quarter of a pound or an eighth of a pound of a top dressing with 545 greens grain at this time of year brings moisture to the table. The guys that have been doing this consistently, I got a call the other day. I mean, I've been doing these small little light top dressings of 545 greens grade. It gets down in the canopy. They're doing it in fairways, on approaches, on greens, on
I
tees.
made a recommendation the other day for someone was talking about a major tournament prep for September. Like it was like the first weekend in September. It's like, what do you recommend I do? My fairways, my rough, my tees, it's all going to be hungry. Like I said, 545 about 3 weeks out.
Yeah.
And this is in Virginia. It's going to be
hot and gooey.
Hot and warm, and that 545, so it's that nice even. 545 is a 1-to-1 ratio of NPK. Calcium is 6% in that product.
It's actually a little higher, but yeah.
Sulfur is about 6% in that product. So it
brings, and there's a lot of minerals. That was built so that we could remineralize a soil. So there's a lot of mineral in there. Much of it coming from the feed that we, from going through the bird, but we're adding things, humates,
rock phosphates.
I mean, it was like I said, it was the first product that we make. We made it at the time. We thought it would be the only fertilizer.
You made it to be complete as possible.
It was going to be the only thing that we were going to have. We were going to be a lawn care company, and that was going to be the product. And understand, a lot of people get afraid of that low analysis. But when you have a low N and you're putting out, for sake of argument, a half a pound of N, you're putting out 10 pounds of product, of carbon and minerals, building the soil, really strengthening the environment, flocculating the soil. When you go to our 1025, now we have to pull out some of the material and put in the methylene urea. So when you're putting down a half a pound of that, you're putting down 3 pounds of carbon versus 10 and minerals.
Well, what I love about
difference.
Our stuff, and what people have to take a leap of faith on until they do it for the first time, is that you see response out of these granulars at less than a quarter of a pound of N. You'll still see it respond.
Yeah.
So it doesn't take much, and it's about the bioavailability. It's about all the other reactions that are happening because of this going out there.
Let me tell a story. One of our Earthworks for Home customers had gotten some A22, now a little bit different, but had put it down on very sandy soil, and nothing had ever worked before. I mean, they were saying, I've been putting down fertilizer, but sandy soils, low CECs, much like our, constructed soils, not a lot of biology. They put this down, and they were just amazed at the length of the color, the quality of the color, the depth of the color.
Yeah.
I mean, in sandy soils, you really need to feed microbes, and that's what Earthworks. That's what biological soil management has always been about: feeding microbes and letting them do their job. And I think that's, again, coming back full circle. That's what we talk about in the Academy. That's what we talk about on these podcasts. That's what we talk about in our turf talks. That's our passion.
And getting response out of the plants immediately. You think, organic, low analysis, this, that, it's just going to help the soil.
It doesn't work until June. It's very expensive. You can't afford it. All of that we've proven wrong.
Right.
My favorite one, of course, is that, it'll all kick out in June. I'm like, seriously, if that was ever going to happen, we wouldn't be in business.
Put down a quarter pound in March and see the response out of it. Then it's bioavailable.
But these little tiny applications, a quarter a pound, an eighth of a pound, a 545 greens grade.
Well, and I like the greens grade idea too, because it gets so much more dispersion.
Yeah.
I mean, you're accessing so much more surface area with that.
And it gets down into the canopy, and it feeds a lot faster. I mean, I think you did this with one of our influencers on the Earthworks for Home side, where they put it in a cup and it just melted out.
Oh yeah.
As opposed to one of the sludge products that just fell to the bottom and sat there.
Yep.
And meal products will do the same thing. But this is a constructed compost, and it's mineral dense, because we feed these birds with a lot of things to keep them healthy, to build strong shells. All of that stuff goes right through the bird and comes into this product.
And check it out on the website. We put that that compost analysis. We put down that full spectrum.
The analysis you're talking about.
The full elemental analysis of the compost.
Right.
Like you keep saying, all the minerals. It's got 60 plus minerals.
60 plus minerals. And I get frustrated with it. Well, the plant only needs 14, and we know that. I mean, there was a great podcast, if you haven't heard, with Lawrence. I think maybe the both of us had done this interview with Lawrence, but he talks about where these minerals that the plants will take up are valuable. They build them enzymes, they build amino acids. So this concept of you only need 14 elements has been disproven and debunked many, many times by many scientists all across the world. And that's what Jerry always wanted to do when we built these products, is have mineral density so that we can constantly remineralize the soil. Remember, we're growing a cover crop, so the plant's constantly saying, hey, I'll take some of that, I'll take some of that. What we're doing is, here's a little, we're replenishing the soil.
Love it.
Here's a little marketing thing. And we'll go from there.
Hey, this is good.
Yeah, I think it has been good, and we've got to go to dinner, and we've got an Academy to do tomorrow. So, again, apologize for the informality of our podcast, but every once in a while, I think it's good to just get together and do a little review, and hopefully, you picked up something out of this, and that we can get back and do these little quarterly reviews just to talk about what the heck's going on out there. And hopefully it doesn't mean we have to have a little car crash on the way.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, what a day, dude. Yeah, we've really had.
I should go take some aspirin, I think.
It's all good. All right, well, thank you all for tuning into the Earthworks podcast. And Joel, this was fun.
Thank you, Jack.
Yep. Let's get back to work.
Yes, we should. Or drinking.
Oh, yeah, something like that.
Something like that.